finally it looks like the Liberals, and therefore the coalition, might actually have an energy and emissions policy that's a clear contrast to Labor's, as well as a credible platform on which to campaign now and fight all the way through to the next election. Today, the Shadow Ministry met and ratified Energy Shadow Minister Dan Tehan's submission to dump net zero, to oppose Labor's emissions reduction targets, to attack the rollout of renewables without a social licence, and to repeal all the taxes and legislated targets and emissions mandates that are putting up your power prices, that are costing jobs, driving industries offshore and devastating our countryside.
Labor's energy plan is actually not a transition at all. It's a demolition job on households, on businesses, on families and on jobs. To keep faith with that commitment, the Liberal Party will remove a net zero target from our policy. We remain committed to the Paris Agreement and to doing our fair share to reduce emissions. But we will do it in a way that protects households and budgets and keeps our economy strong.
Now, it took much longer than it should have, but they finally got there eventually, and now can credibly attack Labor's energy train wreck because they've got their own position. This is not a position that's constrained anymore by the need to conform to the same net zero targets as Labor. The coalition finally is no longer joined to the hip with Labor in forcing up your power bill, sending companies bust and desecrating our landscape and coastline for no environmental gain whatsoever. I mean, finally, Scott Morrison's net zero monkey is off the Liberals' back.
A country where we use Australian resources to help Australians first. Australians were promised that life would be cheaper under Labor. You all remember that. But you all know that Australians have been absolutely crushed by cost of living increases. I just want to make it clear. Anthony Albanese lied to Australians when he said he had a plan for cheaper power prices, and every bill, every month, every quarter is a reminder of that lie.
Now, mark my words, those lines about Australians getting to use Australia's energy resources here in our country to keep our power prices down, well, those lines are incredibly potent. The lines about our coal, our gas, our uranium, well, they have cut through, and Labor's insiders know it. So too has the argument that Australia is only about 1% of the global emissions. And unless the other big emitters are in on this, and they are not, then we are crazy to go it alone. Labor hates being reminded of that fact, which is why I keep reminding you every night and repeating it as often as I do. Now, today, without a doubt, was Sussan Ley's best press conference as Liberal leader. I'm a hard marker, but today she knew the content, and as a former Environment Minister, she was able to dispatch some of the more tricky questions from the Canberra Press Gallery on a whole lot of that Paris Agreement detail that were designed to trip her up. But they didn't trip her up.
I've just read your document, and you're essentially going to dismantle nearly everything Labor's got in place in terms of targets, mechanisms, the whole thing. Can you just square the circle how the investment community would react to that, given they seem to be quite happy for the first time in a long time they've got the long-term certainty to invest?
The policies, if you can call them that this Labor government has put in place that are doing nothing to make energy and your electricity bills affordable. Very happy to dismantle them. They are not working, and the proof point is that energy prices, electricity prices are going up. And the real challenge of the cost of stabilising this grid is something that is being sheeted home to Australian households. This was very obvious to me when I stood at Tomago Aluminium and realised how the biggest energy user in New South Wales, probably in the country, 13% of New South Wales' energy grid, is effectively running up the white flag to say, we can't produce aluminium in this country anymore because the cost of energy is too high. Today, the Liberal leader came across as someone who had something to fight for
And as someone willing to stick up for ordinary Australians out there bleeding on the cost of energy, and Labor's demand that they bear the brunt of climate action.
Now, I know what it's like to be a mum with the bills piling up. And in the last 6 months, I've spent a lot of time talking to mums with the bills piling up. And I've sensed the anxiety that I have felt when my electricity bills were piling up on the kitchen windowsill at the farm all those years ago, and I had no idea how I was going to pay them.
Without a doubt, this is the Liberal Party's best chance now to arrest its vote decline and to turn things around, because its supporters have finally got some hope that their MPs in Canberra are listening, and the party that's always prized economic management is no longer going to sit by and let Labor sell out this country. Now, my instinct is that now the decision's been made to dump net zero, to dump all the targets, to demand that any rollout of renewables must have the support of local communities in order to happen, and that we're going to start using our God-given resources here in this country to help Australians, finally, we might see some change. And that alone, I think, might pull those pro-net zero Liberals, who are now squarely in the minority, back into line. Now, if they don't, then they should quit, as they threatened to do, because Phil Thompson nailed it the other night. They're not that good anyway.
We've seen now people threaten to quit positions and throw all their toys out of the cot. Once again, the Liberal Party talking about itself, and to, you know, those people who want to threaten to quit, then quit. You're not that important anyway.
You want to be a teal Liberal? Go and join the Teals. Now that the battle lines have been drawn, now that the coalition has walked away from the net zero timeline that is, as business writer Terry McCrann once described, the longest economic suicide note in Australia's history, the Liberal Party finally has given itself its best chance of political recovery. And given how quickly the Prime Minister was out today trying to spin this result, it says to me that Labor know all too well just how vulnerable they really are on cost of living pain.
The idea that the lesson that the Liberals have learnt from their defeat at the last two elections, and the last election where they had their worst result since 1943, is that they need to be more right-wing, more sceptical, more in denial about climate change, and continue to engage in these climate wars. Australia needs to move on.
Well, earth to the Prime Minister, you are a goose. The Liberals backed net zero at the last two elections. They went backwards. That terrible 1943 result, worst ever in living memory, was because they were Me Tooing you. One of the Teal Liberals, New South Wales Senator Dave Sharma, who yesterday was in the pro-net zero camp, well, today he seemed in no mood to continue the internal fight.
There was a lot of unity around the view that Labor's so-called energy transition is failing on its own terms. It's pushing up power prices, it's lessening reliability, and it's not lowering emissions.
And besides, for all those wedded to net zero, there's still the fig leaf of carbon neutrality by the end of the century. By the end of the century. Because that's all the Paris Agreement actually commits us to. But no moderate can claim any sort of win, because staying in the Paris Agreement matches the very same policy that the National Party announced over 2 weeks ago. Now, out of this result today, the Liberal left, the moderates, they have been utterly smashed, and they cannot pretend otherwise. For the past two elections, they have had it their way. They have had net zero. They've been joined at the hip with Labor. It's killed them, the moderates, and it's killed the Liberal Party politically. Now, I'd be surprised if Teal Liberals like Andrew Bragg now carried out that earlier threat to resign from the front bench, but if they do, so what? Better have some lions back on the front bench than the lambs sitting there now, because you're going to need the lions for the fight that's now ahead. The challenge will be for Sussan Ley and her leadership team to be the warriors needed to make a contest out of net zero and to win it. At the last election, they had a pro-nuclear policy but never went out and fought for it. They had an immigration policy of sorts under Dan Tehan, but they never really articulated it or fought for it. They never fought against Labor's unrealised capital gains tax either. The one seat where they did that, where the candidate fought long and hard for nuclear and against the unrealised gains tax, was the one and only seat, Teal seat, that the Liberals won back. But for tonight, for the first time in months, there is hope that our country might get a serious choice on an issue that matters more than almost any other. Finally it feels like the Liberals are giving themselves a fighting chance to win back disenchanted voters and to take the fight up to a weak and underperforming Albanese government. For their sake, for our sake, for our country's sake, let's hope they take it.